All right, buddy Joe. Hey, thanks for the response videos, man. I appreciate it. They're great, and you raised so many good questions. Just excellent, excellent, excellent. I want to start off talking about my parrot. When I was about 2 years old, my parents went down to Sears and bought this parrot, and he's about this big, and he was green with yellow head. It was a Mexican double yellowhead parrot. Brilliant thing. I mean, there was an intricate mechanism on his cage that you had to pull a piece up and slide a piece over. And Parrot figured it out in no time at all, man. He'd climb up there and he'd open the thing up and he'd get out. So we actually had to keep a padlock on the cage when we wanted him in the cage. He was out most of the time, but we had to actually put a padlock on it because he figured that thing out in no time at all. He was really bright, and he had these eyes. They had orange irises and black pupils, and he could, I don't know, he could make them contract and expand. And he had, talk about emotions. This thing was intense. I mean, if he, they can be a little jealous. They have jealousy, and they have all the emotions we have, and if he was jealous, if he saw you paying attention to something, you'd look over and he'd be there just, he'd be trembling and shaking and staring at you with these eyes going, I mean, he was just incredible. And he was so smart. Talk about using tools. My younger brother used to tease him, Pancho was his name, used to tease him. And so the bird was angry at my brother. And if the bird was loose, it would just chase my brother, would walk to get him. My brother had to jump up on a coffee table to get away from the parrot. Um, what was my point? Pardon me, man, I forgot my point. That was going some way. A train of thoughts derailed. Um, oh, yeah. So, if I had the parrot on my shoulder and my brother walked in the room, the parrot would immediately, focus in on him. What the parrot would do, though, is rather than we had clipped his wings so that he wouldn't fly up and, get up in the drapes, rather than, try to fly down and get my brother, he would bite my earlobe. And of course, he knew by doing that I would get my brother out of the room because I didn't want him to bite me. He would use me as a tool to get my brother out of the room. I mean, to talk about tool use, he used me, biting on my earlobe like, okay. So he was an amazing animal, man. That bird. Yes, they are. They have everything we do, man. They're, as you say, a living soul. Um, he had everything we have. It was a great animal. And I ran across a bear in Yosemite once at night. Three of us, when I was about maybe 19 years old, we were up on a big granite rock that some glacier left there eons ago, and this bear came by and saw us, turned around and walked the other way. And like young fools, we slid down off the rock. We started following the bear, and I will never forget. The bear stopped, turned around, and looked at us. And the look in this bear's eye, I mean, the look said, "You young fools." It was like it communicated to me. It was we all just turned around and walked away, but it was like it communicated to me. I mean, I saw real wisdom in this bear's eyes. The bear spared us because we were fools. Yeah. I think that if we were raised in a culture that placed a different type of intrinsic value on life, you mentioned India. I think we would be that way. I mean, I think a lot is determined by culture. It's sort of the psychological soup that we're raised in. Um, and yeah, in our society, we've objectified, we've distanced ourselves, especially in an urban environment. There was some really interesting comments and a video made by one of the commenters about how it's different on a small farm. The attitude towards animals is very, very different. There's a lot of respect for animals, but in this urban environment where we're alienated from our food. Um, a piece of meat seems like an object, and we lose contact with the fact that I remember when I first learned in school, I had to learn this in school. This is how tragic this is, huh? That meat was muscle, that it was muscle tissue. And I was blown away. I was a little kid, and I realized, well, I have muscles, and I had never realized that meat was the muscle of an animal. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so we've abstracted all that stuff away, and we're alienated from our food, and we're alienated from animals. Yeah, authority. Do we have authority over the animals? Where do we get the authority from? I don't think we have authority, man. I think we got the power, as you say, but I have no idea. I don't think we have authority. And if we do, even if we do have authority from somewhere, there's such a thing as abusing our authority too. When you have authority, you can abuse it too. So even if we have authority of some sort, we could very well be abusing that authority. Um, yeah, special sapiens. Like we have some special sapiens. I like what you read there in Wikipedia. Yeah, I don't agree with it either. It's actually kind of comical. Sounds very sober and very scientific, but it actually sounds pretty comical. I don't think we have some. We have highly developed frontal lobes. Which is mostly what gets us into trouble. Our frontal lobes get us into trouble all the time. Um, Artificial intelligence, that's fascinating, man, that we have, as you point out, we have a test for something that we haven't created yet, and animals even pass that test. And if we can't treat animals with respect, what are the implications for when we finally do develop artificial life? Yeah, I am sure that we will abuse that. You see the theme in a lot of science fiction movies. Creating slave races of machines and machines that are just there for our pleasure, androids, and then revolts occurring, as they assert their own rights. Um, um, yeah, this thing about animals have instincts, but we have intelligence. Everything has intelligence. I mean, even a piece of ivy. Ivy knows where to reach its tendrils out to. I just think intelligence is inherent in life. Even plant life. To some degree, it has to be aware of its environment and be able to respond to its environment. I mean, that's one way to one thing to call intelligence. And this empathy, I think, is what's really lacking with people. One, we're alienated from our food, but I think also there's a question of empathy and how far does our empathy extend. Um, our emotional intelligence. You'd mentioned people who, as we, develop our intelligence, we appear to, become colder. You don't think you use the word colder, but that's the idea, more distance. And I think it's because we don't really have a real well-rounded education, because a rounded education, I think, would develop our emotional intelligence as well, and that's where our empathy is from. And if you take sociopaths are people who can't even empathize with fellow human beings. Um, they just have no empathy, and so as a result, they kill them, harm them, torture them, eat them. Um, Causes no internal conflict, no uh, cognitive dissonance at all. So, yeah, we should maximize our empathy, I think. You'd mentioned animism. Yeah, there's a thing they call participation mystique, where the object and the subject are kind of merged, but it's usually cast, as an inferior kind of frame of mind. But yeah, object subject sort of merged. Medical experiments, I just don't think we should be doing medical experiments on animals. That's where we basically say human life is more valuable than animal life, and so we can sacrifice these animals for the abstract good of humans. Now we should have the courage to do experiments on ourselves. Of course, then we get into economy, and what they end up doing is offering to do medical experiments in exchange for money, so that the poor and the imprisoned, the lower classes, are tempted into, or forced by desperation into doing, being the subject of those medical experiments. So, that also becomes a problem. We're also cruel to ourselves. I love the story about the beetle man, and yeah, ants. I think we have more in common with ants than we actually have in common with chimps. I mean, the ants have societies; they have armies. There are races of ants, species of ants that enslave other ants, just like people did on Earth and still do, and trafficking, etc. So in a way, we're more like the ants than we are like the chimpanzees. Um, 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 I'm gonna have to make a second video, my friend. But that's cool. I'll make a part two. All right. This will be the end of part one. Joe, talk to you real soon. Bye.